Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Me? Well, as always, I'm very glad it's Friday. It's been an awful long week this, although I have to say I've thoroughly enjoyed just about every minute of it. Yesterday afternoon, I got to speak to a robotics expert about the potential for robots in the demolition and construction industry. Really did make for a fascinating chat, and we'll be bringing that to you next week as the latest episode of our Tech Foresights video and audio podcast series. There are two more of episodes of that in production as well. One of them is already recorded, now just needs to be edited. The second is scripted, now just needs to be recorded and edited, but there's more to come. But you can catch our previous two episodes over on YouTube. First one featured Built Robotics all the way from San Francisco, and the second featured JCB, who are not quite so far away up in Staffordshire. Do us a favour, if you do choose to go and have a listen or a watch of those, please hit the subscribe button. Not only does that mean that you get notified each time there's a new video, it also helps our channel enormously. Thanks in advance for that. Now, without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and I will be explaining that in just a second, and get this show on the road. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I'm your host, Mark Anthony. It is Friday, the 20th of January, and as that remarkably persistent guy just said, welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, CDI removes a pair of fire-damaged silos from the Washington skyline. Volvo charges ahead with a new electric compactor. Liebherr takes cable management to a whole new level, and Prinoth takes hydrogen power to the slopes. Plus, your robot assistant is standing by to take your instructions, all of which will make a bit more sense when we get to it. In addition to all of that, our question of the day is, what is your favourite non-sweary insult? This was being discussed over on Twitter yesterday, and there was a couple of corkers. Plum, which I've used myself. Pilchard, big fan of that. Balloon, which I quite like, but my personal favourite, somebody was described as an absolute parcel. I don't know what that means, but it did tickle me. So if you ever find yourself in polite company but need to put someone in their place, what is your go-to non-sweary insult? And we'll get to all of that in just a second. But first, let's see who among the rich and the shameless will be celebrating a birthday on this day of days. Happy birthday! And it's many happy returns to blues guitarist Leadbelly. Love to know where he got that name from. And also to Born Free author Joy Adamson and Italian film director Federico Fellini. Happy birthday also to astronaut Buzz Aldrin, former Doctor Who Tom Baker, movie director David Lynch, and to Kiss guitarist Paul Stanley. To American comedian and chat show host Bill Maher, Take That's Gary Barlow, and Sid Wilson from Slipknot. Gary Barlow and Sid Wilson in the same sentence. You can just imagine it, can't you? Many happy returns to them, one and all. I knew I could rely on you all. The non-sweary insult of the day, we've had some belters already. Somebody suggested Muppet. Somebody else has suggested Donut. And my personal favourite, Steve Williamson, is suggesting Nugget. Yeah, absolutely. Love all of those. Keep them coming, people. Now, where were we? Yes. Once upon a time, there were these silos in America. For many years, they stood looking out over the Washington landscape. One day, they caught fire, but the silos were strong and they survived. Some months later, a team from Controlled Demolition, Inc., or CDI, arrived. The silos were very afraid. And they were right to be afraid. Yeah, the outcome of that story was pretty predictable once I'd mentioned the letters CDI. Brilliant job. I'm sorry, you found me distracted. Steve Williamson has offered some fantastic suggestions, Nugget being my personal favourite, up until he mentioned this. His favourite non-swearing insult is Walloper. Yeah, brilliant. You wouldn't know this, but actually my nickname for my youngest daughter is Wallop. Because she's so accident prone. She's been walloped since she was about 2 years old. Now, let's get back to the show. Yesterday, we brought you details of the new Volvo L350h wheel loader that will be making its debut at ConExpo in March. But that won't be the only new machine to be revealed by the company in Las Vegas. There's another machine that Volvo is keeping very much under wraps until the opening day of the show. And there's also this.
Hello, thanks for joining me today. I'm John Rouse with Volvo Construction Equipment on the asphalt design team, and today I'll be giving you a walk around of our latest electric machine, the DD25 electric asphalt compactor. We're going to start off going around the exterior, then we'll go up under the hood and show you all the exciting bits under there as well. The machine did receive a design update from the 25B, so it looks vastly different than the older machine. In addition to the exterior, we do have full LED lighting options to provide that ambient lighting on night job sites. And even to our operator's platform, we now have a full color display to keep the operator informed of everything that's going on with the machine. This being an electric machine, you're going to have to charge it somehow. Our charge port to AC charging is located right here. Under the hood, we'll get to our fast charger. Here is our 48-volt DC fast charger. This will get the machine to a full charge in as little as an hour. So the first question with many electric machines is, what is the runtime? We are designing this machine to be able to run for a full typical working shift. This is something we are continually testing both here on site and in the field to continually update our power management strategy so we get our maximum runtime possible to keep this roller rolling. If we move around to the other side, we'll go over some of our battery structure and motor as well. Here on this side under hood, many of these components are going to look familiar to you if you're familiar with the ECR25 and L25 electric machines. All of our architecture is based on the same job site proven technology that they are using. We have a 20 kilowatt hour power pack in this machine. Talking about our motor will really allow us to compare and contrast the performance of this machine with its diesel counterpart. So due to emissions regulations, the diesel version has 18.5 kilowatts of available power. This machine has 24 kilowatts, so that allows it to have better performance on grades, and since it's not relying on natural aspiration, it's able to keep that performance in higher altitudes as well, where the diesel performance is going to be knocked off. We have maintenance-free bearings for our eccentric bearings, no motor oil, no engine air filters to deal with. Everything on this machine is just hydraulic oil and grease points for the articulation joint. With all of that, it adds up to a lower cost of ownership and higher production for the machine. Thank you for joining me for a walk around today of the DD25 electric asphalt compactor.
I'm pretty sure we were the first to bring you footage of Dynapac's first electric compactor. Well, the electric compactor market just got a bit more congested and a whole lot more competitive. am like a swan. Above the surface, I'm graceful, noble even. But below the surface, I'm paddling like fury to stay afloat. You don't get to see that. You also don't get to see what lurks behind the camera. Oh, sure, the backdrop that you see before you is neat, tidy, well lit, a place for everything and everything in its place. Beneath my desk is a snake pit of knotted cables. In the modern office or studio, cable management is a constant challenge. In fact, there are entire YouTube channels dedicated to the subject. Out on mine and quarry sites, however, cable management goes to a whole new level. But thankfully, those fine folks, very smart folks as well, at Liebherr, have got us covered. Ingenious and effective. Precisely what we've come to expect from Liebherr, really.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Pristine and pure white snowy mountain slopes are the very picture of the earth unsullied and untainted by man's presence. So where better to show off a hydrogen-fueled concept machine? My apologies for that. The signal just went out for some reason. I hope that didn't interrupt your viewing too much. Can only apologise for that. I was about to say, when all this live streaming stuff goes sideways, I want to drive one of those Prinoth machines, ideally somewhere in the mountains of Aspen. Working on that in the background, but a bit of this. Yesterday, as I've already mentioned, I interviewed a robotics expert who, it's basically for a forthcoming episode of our Tech Foresight's video and audio podcast series. He reckoned that we're currently about 7 years away from seeing robots on UK demolition and construction sites. The boffins at Boston Dynamics might argue with the rise of the robots, and it could be a lot closer than you think.
Forgot my tools again. Such a show off.
Two things. First of all, hasn't Boston Dynamics come a long way since it unveiled its robot dog just a few years ago, which we saw at Expo last time around, actually? And secondly, I wonder if they've given that humanoid robot a camp walk to make it appear less threatening. Either way, there's something fascinating and yet oddly terrifying about the way that thing moves. Would you want one working alongside you? It's coming for your job, people.
Sorry to interrupt the guy with the funny glasses, but if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button as it helps our channel. Or, better still, share this video with a friend or a colleague. Thank you. Right, back to Beardy.
Right, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around for that, then please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Have a great day. Have a great weekend, and thanks for watching. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will see you on the other side of this for the Craic. How are we all doing? How are you doing, Ken? You're feeling a bit better today? Let's have a rattle through the chat, shall we? Let's go back to the beginning. Despite the fact that he was laid up ill yesterday, I think Ken was one of the people on the show early doors. Let's go through this in chronological order. In actual fact, it turns out Steve Williamson was the first, and Steve has gone off to be filmed and photographed. He is a superstar, star of stage and screen. Nick Drew's here as well. Mentioned it yesterday, and Nick has announced it officially today. Nick Drew is heading to Las Vegas. Live in Las Vegas. Great news, Nick. Let me know where you're staying. Let me know how long you're going to be there. I'd like to think you'll be there for the duration, but I realise your time is somewhat more precious. Let me know how you're doing all that, and we'll obviously meet up a lot. Mark Whiting's here as well. Morning, Mark. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Have a look at Dan Cullen was next off the line. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for being here, Dan. So yes, my question of the day, which was, as I say, it was inspired by a conversation that was taking place over on Twitter yesterday. Your favourite or your go-to non-sweary insult, and we've had some belters. Let's have a look. Ken Hatcher says Muppet. Yes, I've used that from time to time. I don't think I've ever actually said nugget, but I might start. Dan Cullen, gobshite and bleeding muppet. Yeah, absolutely. Gobshite is one. I think I've been called that more than I've ever actually used it. Nick Drew says donut. That'll go down a storm in America, Nick. They love a donut over there. Steve Williamson first offered nugget, then he offered tool, and then we get to his my personal favourite of his, Gary Muirhead, as much use as a chocolate fireguard. But that's my absolute favourite. I am this afternoon, when I have nothing better to do, I'm going to sit down and draw up a list of all the wallopers in my life. And oh boy, it's going to be a long list. Dan Cullen admiring the CDI job. Yeah, that is some job. It is such a predictable outcome. They turn up, they do their business, the things level on the ground, and they go away. It's unbelievable. Now, this is one I wanted to check it. Steve Williamson, as an insult, is suggesting Raj. Raj? Not a clue. Never heard that one. That's a new one on me. Jim Turner's here as well. Morning, Jim. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Hope you're enjoying the music that's playing behind me. Question of the day, Gary Muirhead, donkey. Oh boy, is there some donkeys in this industry. Oh, yeah, and unfortunately I seem to have worked with most of them. There you go. As I said, Steve Williamson was heading off because he's got the fine folks at Trimble going up to take some photographs and to have a chat with him. Let's have a look. Ken Hatcher says, if a battery lasts on that roller, it lasts anywhere. Not quite as straightforward as that, actually. Having been out to see the Dynapack electric roller, the way that it lasts the whole day is basically because those rollers are not working in the same way as perhaps an excavator might work. They are very stop-start, your rollers, particularly those that are working on asphalt. So if you imagine asphalt being paved, they work a bit. Asphalt paves a bit more, they work a bit. And between times, obviously, being electric, once you step off, it's off. So in actual fact, I don't actually know the battery life of that one as such. In real terms, it will give you a full day, but in actual fact, I think you're looking at about 4 hours, because that's about as much work as a roller on that sort of application would do. Interesting point, though, which is ultimately, that is absolutely true, as long as they remember to put it on charge at the end of the shift, which, yeah, maybe, drawing upon two of the things that we've seen there, we tend to think of this idea of robots coming over here, stealing our jobs, like the Japanese did or didn't do. Maybe there is some scope to be had for robots charging equipment. I've seen a very smart, though slightly scary, kind of recharger, like a robot arm that is the charger for like a Tesla car, and the thing sort of hovers around and then finds the slot before anyone says yes, don't bend over in front of it. But is that an opportunity for robots? I thought one of the things that was interesting yesterday, which is stating the obvious, I was speaking to a guy from a company called Navtech Radar, who are into all things robotic and everything else. And one of the points that he was making was there is no point in putting a robot in a machine that was originally designed for a human. He said it's better basically to go back to square one and design the machine either as a robot or around a robot. It's an interesting point. I know whenever we talk about autonomy and we talk about robotization, there is always this slight concern that it's going to start stealing people's jobs. If our friend over at Navtech Radar is anything to go by, don't have a huge amount to worry about in that, because it doesn't make practical sense to take a robot and stick it in a machine that is way better operated by a human. Let's have a look. Gary, oh no, it's not, it's Ken Hatchett. We're going back to the cable management. I remember working on an open cast with them, cable moving with a backhoe loader. Yeah, I mean, those are big old cables. And Budge Mining, if I remember right. Yeah, certainly Budge Mining were obviously a company, but they were a big deal back in the day. Dan Cullen slightly underimpressed by the robot. It does show, though, just how far those have come. I'm sure you will remember myself, my son, and virtually everybody else that went to ConExpo came back with video footage of the Boston Dynamics dog, which I think was referred to as Spot. And there was a weird thing about Spot. Obviously, it is a robot dog, and if you haven't seen it, go look it up on YouTube. Obviously, it's a metal dog. It has no feelings. It has no head. It is a robot dog, and yet one of the things they demonstrated, or they used to demonstrate the fact that it couldn't be knocked off course, was actually kicking Spot the dog. And bizarrely, I found that quite offensive. Not offensive as in right into my MP, but it did feel oddly like kicking a dog, which I wasn't entirely comfortable with. But that was, what was that, 3 years ago? 3 years ago in March. And yet here we are 3 years later, and Spot the dog has become I was going to say a living, breathing, quite clearly that isn't the case, but has become an upright robot capable of climbing scaffolding, making conscious decisions on what tools are, and then getting itself down. I'm not entirely sure there will ever be a call for double back somersaults with a half pike on a demolition or construction site, but it certainly demonstrates their capabilities. No way. If they do, more people unemployed. I think that's a long way off, and not a good thing, says Dan. Yeah, I think this is another. It's kind of a repeat of what we're talking about with electric machines. I think time and a place. So if you imagine, if you imagine, cast your mind forward the 7 years that it's likely to take for us to get robots on site. So imagine we've got fleets of excavators and dumpers and skid steer loaders that are all electric powered, and the job of the operator, the human operator, at the end of each working day is to take it back to a holding area. Just imagine that. And they then jump out the machines, go on their merry way, go home to see the wife and children, and leave everything else to the robot. And the robot comes along, puts them all in place, puts them all on charge, possibly gives them a bit of a wash down, checks the hydraulic fluid and stuff like that, so that when the human operator arrives the following day, that machine is good to go. Now that, to my mind, is the sensible deployment of a robot. Not replacing a human, but actually helping a human. Much the same as the robot system we just saw in the film there. That's what I would like to see. And I think partly through ethics and partly through practicality. One of the things that I keep hearing about with robots is the purpose is not to replace people, but it is to replace jobs. And I'm trying to do this from memory. The guy that I was speaking to at NavTech yesterday was referring to what he said was the 4 Ds of robotization. In other words, the 4 applications where robots make sense. And those are, what was it? Dirty, dangerous, dull, and there was another D, and I can't remember what the other D was. Listen to the podcast or watch the podcast when it comes out. But what he was basically saying was they weren't inventing equipment and machines and robots to replace humans. They were inventing robots to do jobs that no human could or should do. Yes, I wish I could remember what that 4th D was, but yeah. Dangerous, difficult, dull. Dangerous, difficult, dull, and dirty. I think that was the... Don't hold me to it, but I think that was what the 4 Ds were. And if you think about demolition and construction, there are lots and lots of those. So imagine, for example, given that it's almost the 7th anniversary now, the Didcot disaster. Those of you that were around or that have read up on it since, half of a boiler house at the Didcot A power station collapsed on 4 demolition workers back in February 2016. The remaining half stayed upright and yet precarious, and it was decided the only way to bring it down was through a controlled explosion. Controlled explosion required robots, effectively, to go in and place explosives Those robots were like little tracked, kind of like tracked excavators, very primitive, not overly maneuverable, and obviously there was debris to work around and that kind of thing. Imagine that handing that task to the robot we just saw from Boston Dynamics would completely change the format of that. We also had an instance reported quite a lot in the aftermath of the big earthquake that hit Christchurch in New Zealand. I was reporting predominantly on the demolition in the aftermath of that, but by the same token, there was an awful lot of surveying went on before that. And I remember there was one building which was a cathedral, and they flew drones through the window to see exactly what the lie of the land was. Something like that robot, I realise they'll probably be expensive, but they are ultimately expendable, could have been sent in there to have a proper look around and report back afterwards. Could change the entire nature of the beast. A greaser bot, yes, absolutely. Check the levels, grease up and start the machine to warm up 15 minutes before start time. Getting a nice warm cab with defrosted windows. Yeah, why not? Why not? It's not like they need any sleep themselves. They're not going to be taking sick days and everything else. They could literally, based on what we just saw that with that machine, you could even have them pop into the site canteen and put the bloody kettle on, so everyone arrives for a nice hot cup of tea or coffee. Probably get ahead of myself here now, but yeah, why not? Why not? The only concern, obviously, having watched all of the Terminator movies, is if these things ever become self-aware and start talking to each other, then our days are numbered. But for the time being, I think we're probably okay. And at that point, it stops being the 4 Ds of robotization, and then we switch over to Asimov's law, 3 laws of robots. And I know one of those is no robot will ever harm a human. The problem is those laws were drawn up, A, by an author, and B, there's no sign up from the robots themselves. Fingers crossed they agree. Right, people, as it is a Friday, I'm going to let you all get off and go about your business. No Saturday Social this week, but there is a Saturday Social next week. It's been a long while. It's been a good 3 months since we last did one, I think. So, yeah, we're planning to have a bit of a chinwag on Saturday next week. I think that's the 28th off the top of my head. If you are around on the 28th, please pop by, have a chat. Let's talk about robots, and let's talk about cable management, and let's talk about training and sustainability and anything else that takes your fancy. Have a great weekend, everyone. Really enjoyed your input, particularly the non-swear insults. I'm going to call somebody a walloper in just a few moments. She'll probably hit me for it, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. So until next week, everybody, have a great afternoon, great weekend. See you Monday. Till then, all the best.